This video is meant to help you with your Chapter 8 review assignment. This is not meant to be something where you sit and copy it down. It's meant to be watched after you've already done the assignment. Check your answers and then you can go through and see what you need extra help with. So, number 1, we have 3 terms with the highest exponent of 2, so that makes it a quadratic trinomial. Number 2, we have 2 terms, the highest exponent of 1 on our variable, so that makes it a linear binomial. And number 3, we have 1 term with the highest exponent of 3, so that makes it a cubic monomial. Add or subtract the polynomials. Here we're just combining like terms. 5x squared plus 3x squared is just 8x squared. Number 5, remember we want to distribute this negative out, and when we line up our like terms, minus t squared will go under the 4, minus 3t will go under the 7t, and a positive 2, because negative makes a positive, goes underneath a 9, and we just go straight down. 4t squared minus t squared is 3t squared. 7t minus 3t is 4t. And 9 plus 2 is 11. Number 6, again, we only want to combine our like terms. So I'm going to write it over here on the side. 6m to the 3rd power minus 5m plus 2. Line up our 3m squared. Remember, 3m squared, there are no other like terms, so I'm going to stick it somewhere where I won't combine it with something else. Minus 1, so we get 6m to the 3rd power plus 3m squared minus 5m plus 1. Find the product. So we need to distribute this 5x squared. 5 times 2 is 10. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. 5 times 1 is 5. X squared times x is x to the 3rd. And 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. X squared times 1 would be just x squared. Multiply the binomials. So here you can either use the table method or the FOIL method. Just remember each term in one binomial needs to be multiplied to each of the terms in the other binomial. X times x is 2x squared. X times 2 is 2x. 4 times 2x is 8x. And 4 times 2 is 8. So our final answer, combine our like terms, 2x squared plus 10x plus 8. Some more multiplying binomials. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times negative 2 is a negative 6x. 7 times x is a positive 7x. 7 times negative 2 is a negative 14. Combine our like terms and we get 3x squared plus 1x minus 14. Number 10, x times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 5 is a positive 10. Combine our like terms and we get x squared minus 7x plus 10. And finally, number 11, when you have something squared, remember you're just multiplying it by itself twice. So x plus 7 quantity squared is x plus 7 times x plus 7. X times x is x squared. X times 7 is 7x. 7 times x is 7x. And 7 times 7 is 49. Combine like terms. X squared plus 14x plus 49. Multiply the binomial with the polynomial. So again, here we can't use FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, but the idea of multiplying each term to each of the other terms still applies. X times x to the 3rd is x to the 4th. X times 3x is 3x squared. x times 2 is 2x. 3 times x to the third is 3x to the third. 3 times 3x is 9x. And 3 times 2 is 6. Look through for your like terms. X to the fourth plus 3x squared plus 3x to the third power plus 11x plus 6. And then let's write it in standard form. That's the largest exponent all the way down to the smallest exponent. And that is our final answer. Find the area for the shaded region. Remember, we need to get the area of the large square and subtract the area of the small square. So the area of our large square is 2x plus 3, length times width, 2x plus 3. We can multiply that out. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times 3 is 6x. 3 times 2x is 6x. And 3 times 3 is 9. So 4x squared plus 12x plus 9, that's the area of the large square. But now we need to subtract the area of our small square. Length times width, x times x, equals x squared. So again, we want to subtract that from the larger one. And our final answer is 3x squared plus 12x plus 9. Factor each expression completely. The first one's a binomial, so first thing we do is look for a greatest common factor. I know 8 can divide into all of those, x to the fourth can divide into all of those, and y to the fourth can divide into all of those. When I take those out, I'm left with 3. x4s are gone, y to the third, plus 2, and our y's are gone. So 8x to the fourth, y to the fourth, times 3y to the third power plus 2x squared. Number 15, we need to look for two numbers that multiply to be 15 and add to be 8. Remember, this is a trinomial without a coefficient in front of our x squared term, so we can just do it the old-fashioned way, and we will get x plus 3, x plus 5. Another problem we can do the old-fashioned way. Multiply to be negative 16, add to be negative 6. We have x and x. Our last term is a minus, so one will be positive and one will be negative. Two numbers that multiply together to be negative 16 but add to be 6. That would be a positive 2 and a negative 8. Let's keep going. Two numbers that multiply to be 12 but add to be negative 8. The last number is positive, so both of my signs will be the same. I want them to add to be a negative, so it'll be a negative and a negative. Two numbers that multiply to be 12 but add to be 8, that would be 2 and 6. Number 18, again, it's a trinomial, but this time we have a coefficient in front of our x squared term, so we're going to use our xbox method. 2 times 8 is 16x squared. 8x goes on the bottom. Two numbers that multiply together to be 16 but add to be 8, that would be 4x and 4x. So we take it over to our box. 2x squared goes in our first box, 8 goes in our last box, our 4x and our 4x. And now we pull out our greatest common factor. Greatest common factor between 2x squared and 4x is 2x. Greatest common factor between 4x and 8 is 4. Greatest common factor between 2x squared and 4x is 2x. And greatest common factor between 4x and 8 is 4. So 2x plus 4 and 2x plus 4. But we can also write it as 2x plus 4 squared. Number 19, we're almost done. Again, we have a trinomial with a coefficient in front of our x squared term. So we will use xbox. 3 times 10 is 30x squared. Negative 17 goes on the bottom. We need two numbers that multiply together to be 30 but add together to be negative 17. And that would be negative 15x and negative 2x. We have our x. Now we move on to our box. 3x squared goes in the first box. 10 goes in the last box. Negative 15x and negative 2x go in our side boxes. Greatest common factor between 3x squared and negative 15x is 3x. Greatest common factor between negative 2x and 10 is 2. Greatest common factor between 3x squared and 2x is x. And greatest common factor between negative 15x and 10 is 5. Now remember, we have these negatives here, so is 2 times x negative 2x? No, so that means this one will need to be a negative, and same thing with 3x and 5. That will need to be a negative. So our final answer, 3x minus 2 and x minus 5. Alright, we're almost done. Last problem. Remember, always first look for greatest common factor. It'll make your life so much easier. So I know I can factor out a 2 between all of these. 3x squared plus x minus 4, and that inside one will be so much easier to factor. So on the top goes 3 times negative 4, which is negative 12x squared. 1x goes in the bottom. Two numbers that multiply together to be negative 12 but add to be 1, and that would be 4x and negative 3x. Now we plug it into our box. We have 3x squared and 4. We have 4x, negative 3x. And let's pull out our greatest common factors. Greatest common factor between 3x squared and 3x would be 3x. Greatest common factor between 4x and 4 would be 4. Greatest common factor between 3x squared and, oh, I'm so sorry guys, notice here, I did this one kind of checking my answers. That should be a negative 4. So let's keep going. Greatest common factor between 3x squared and 4 will be x, and greatest common factor between negative 3x and negative 4 would be negative 1. So when we write our final answer, remember we still have this 2 that we factored out earlier. 3x plus 4, x minus 1. And that is our final answer. And number 21, factor completely by grouping. First we look through for a greatest common factor. 3, 2, 18, and 12. There's no number that divides into all of those. So we'll go ahead and group them. My first group and my second group. So we look for the greatest common factor in the first group. That would be an x squared, and we'll be left with 3x minus 2. And then we look for greatest common factor in the second one. Greatest common factor between 18 and 12 would be 6. Remember to look for the greatest. Oh, sorry, I corrected that in class. Remember that p is supposed to be an x. And we'll be left with 3x minus 2. And so when we write our final factored answer, the repeated term goes there. And in the other set of parentheses go the terms that we factored out. And those are the review answers. I hope it was helpful. I hope you're ready for your test. Da, 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 da. And our joke today is, why did the can crusher quit his job? Because it was so depressing. Think about it. So depressing. So depressing. So depressing.